Rea, a John Maxwell Certified Leadership Coach. Welcome to Life, Love, and Leadership, where we discuss everything pertaining to life, love, and leadership. Let's get started. Welcome to the show. We're continuing the conversation about race relations and unity and love and all of those wonderful things. And joining with me on the line is Dr. DrLisaHFuller and Pastor Donzelle Ringold. Hello, everybody. It's so excited to have you both on again for part 2 of this discussion, which is so important and so needful in this day and age. And by the way, this month happens to be Black History Month. And so we're bringing some focus and attention upon this discussion because it's so important for us to talk about. And but before we do, let's open up with an attitude of gratitude. And today, for me, I'm thankful for my daughter. She has been an inspiration to me in my life. My whole life changed when she was born. I have her, she has me wrapped around her finger. And I had the pleasure of actually delivering her when she was a baby. And what an experience that was. And she just stole my heart from the first time I met her. So what about you, Dr. Lisa?
I'm thankful for, I had mentioned my sons. I am thankful for the fact that they have received the Lord Jesus Christ as their personal Savior. So I'm just thankful. And I just wish that for everyone.
Good. Well, you, Pastor Donzelle.
Man, today I am thankful for my favorite person on this entire planet, which is my wife, Tracy Ringold. Man, she is such an inspiration and just such a strength and support to me. And life wouldn't be nearly as full and blessed as it is without her. So I'm really thankful for my wife.
Awesome. That's very good. Thank you both for sharing your attitude of gratitude. And listen, everybody, if you have an attitude of gratitude, we'd like to know what that is. Contact me at Tom@RealLeadershipCompany.com. And I'd love to hear from you on that note. And we also want to tell you to please subscribe to this podcast, share it to other people so that they get a chance to hear what you're hearing, and like on it, comment. Share with other people. We greatly appreciate it. And if you need any coaching or leadership development, contact me at Tom@RealLeadershipCompany.com. And Dr. Lisa, I believe you do some of that too, correct?
Yes, I do have a psychiatric practice. And again, go to my website, DrLisaHFuller at DrLisaHFuller.com.
Awesome. And Pastor Donzelle, are you available to speak anywhere, or do you have anything going on that you'd like to promote right now?
Actually, just my Facebook page is Zelley, Zellly, Ringold, Ringold, which I just really use that to show my passion for Christ and my love for the people of God and just for people in general. And so you can just check that out. And if anything is interesting, you can just contact me through that medium.
Awesome. And I want to tell you about a couple of quick events. One is we are already conducting what's called the Leadership Think Tank. It's a place for every leader. If you're growing, if you want a place to share your thoughts, to find an incubation station, if you will, to work on that thought. That's what the Leadership Think Tank is about. Contact me at Tom@RealLeadershipCompany.com or look in the description of this podcast for more information. But it's absolutely free to jump on board at 8 a.m. on Monday mornings and just be a part of this discussion. If you have a thought, maybe you've been reading a book and you've come across a line that really empowers you, we'd like to know about it. And then you have an opportunity to share with other leaders as well, or speak into their life. And then we have a Fight for Your Marriage. It's a marriage conference coming up on March 3rd, brought to you by the Real Leadership Company. And you don't want to miss out on that. That is actually going to be in Hazel Park, Michigan. So again, for more information on that, you can go to Tom@RealLeadershipCompany.com.
I'm going.
You're going. All right. That's wonderful. So anyway, so why don't we get started in our conversation this morning? Obviously, there's things that make us unique and make us different. And we've heard the word culture today, that there's different cultures at play here. But I think you guys, both of you hit the nail on the head, is that there needs to be discussion, and we need to be in a place where we're willing to hear each other, and we're willing to learn about each other, and we're willing to give grace to each other until we learn more about one another. For me, I got the opportunity to go to Africa back in 2016. And I mean, I couldn't believe how—
Everybody with me, y'all just gonna my face?
Yeah, rub it in your face. But I couldn't believe how welcomed I was. And it was like so weird. And I'd wave at these folks, and I'm in the bush of Africa, and I'm just waving outside the vehicle as we're going down the road, and they're all waving back like we've known each other for 20 years. and that experience was just wonderful, just to feel accepted. And I don't know if they had issues with race or not. I'd have to believe that they didn't have much thought about that. They saw a person of a different color and they thought it was weird. The kids came over to me and they wanted to rub the hair on my arm because they'd never seen that before. But it was such a wonderful experience. And then you get over here, and if you're waving at somebody they're sitting on their porch, they're going to look at you funny. I remember being at 6 Mile in Gratiot, and I was driving these guys around. They were passing out information about the church. And so I was driving through the neighborhood, just making sure everything's cool. And I passed this one house one time and two times. And then the third time I'm passing, he's getting up off the porch and getting ready to come and encounter me, right? But that wasn't the point. Obviously it looks suspicious with the same vehicle driving down the road. But my point is that there is a culture here, and I think how the media and the critical race theory, right, is driving a narrative that brings division. Yeah. And even in the headlines of the news, and I wish the news would not do this, but they do it for getting people to click on it, clickbait, I guess you call it. But it's the way they say something. They take a person's comment out of context. And it's all for the sake of keeping on picking the wound or the scab of this agenda. And the one thing I think we can all agree on is that we need to love one another. How can we love one another? Well, it's going to mean communication, as you talked about, Pastor Donzelle. It's going to mean learning about some history on both of our parts. I remember years ago when wonderful people to me, they are like my mom and dad. I call them mom and dad, and they're African American and super close to me. And so we attempted to mix our churches. My dad's church was predominantly white. Their church was predominantly black. And we decided that we were going to have one service a month, everybody at our church, and then everybody at their church. Well, it started out at our church and ended at our church. And because there was issues with both sides.
Yes. But
issues that people weren't willing to come together and talk about. Mm-hmm. And so what I'd like to do really quick is, have you had an experience? I've had an experience that I want to share before we close today, but I want to know if either of you have had an experience of where you've seen racism happen in your own life, and or a thought that had been placed into your heart or mind years ago as a kid, and you've been raised thinking that way. And I'm going to preface that with this. There's this idea or science project that took place with a room of monkeys, and the monkeys they had bananas at the top of this pole, and as the monkeys tried to climb this pole, they would hose them down. And they did that several times till finally none of the monkeys would climb up. And then they replaced one of the monkeys and put a new monkey in there. And the new monkey tried to go up to get the bananas, but the other monkeys pulled that monkey down. No spraying of water this time.
Wow. Wow.
And they kept doing that until finally all the monkeys were replaced and none of the monkeys would allow the new monkey to go up. And none of them knew why. Right? And there's a quick story off that is there's a little girl, she's seeing her mom making spaghetti and she says, "Mom, why do you always break the noodles before while you're making spaghetti?" And she goes, "I don't know, ask your grandma." And she says, "Grandma, why does mommy always break the noodles before she puts them in the pot?" And grandma says, "Well, I don't know why she's doing it, but I did it because my pot was too small." And so the idea here is what are we carrying in our psyche? What are we carrying with us from our past that was just something someone told us? We've also heard it called a third-party offense, maybe, or whatever the case may be. You mentioned, Pastor Donzelle, of folks who experienced the water cooler experience, not being able to drink out of the same water fountain. And so what are they telling their kids, right? And what have their kids grown up thinking? Because we're living in a little bit of different age now than we lived then. And so how are we going to turn the narrative? So I've spoken a lot, but I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to speak. Dr. Lisa, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things. One of the things is that I've had the opportunity actually to live, in racism. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, I recall my neighbors marching. They're very fair-skinned people marching. Going and sitting down. My father was very fair-skinned and, fine hair where he combed it back. And so they would often say to him, "Why are you with these Black people?" Me and my mother. Example is, I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember going to a store with him. This was years and years and years ago. I'm 60, I don't have a problem saying that. So it was many years ago. And there was a place to eat in this particular grocery store. And he had diabetes. So my mother was off shopping and I was with him. And he would always hold my hand and we would go places. But his blood sugar dropped. This was for all whites. Black people could not sit down. So he went, and I never forget, he told me, he says, "Go and stand over here. I have to go get something to eat," because he'd taken insulin. I didn't understand because, again, kids don't understand that kind of stuff. I mean, little kids don't. But he said, and I came back and he says, "No, you have to stand over there." And he got very loud, with me, said, "You got to stay here or you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get whooping." I didn't understand that he had to go get something to eat. What I found out was, and then when we checked out was, they said, "Oh my goodness, this is a Black man, but he didn't look Black." So why am I saying that? We have to look at, and we're talking about healing. We have to, because it's important, because if people don't have healing, what happens is these things are perpetuated, like you used the story of the noodles. I'm going to say something, and again, I don't want to, but we're talking very open about elephants in the room. Someone may have said that the example with monkeys was racist or is racist. I'm just being honest with you. But the point is, you weren't coming from that point. You were coming from a point of giving an illustration. And I know that, and I know that experiment. Again, the unresolved issues, the unresolved hurt, unresolved unforgiveness, that was there, again, starting from those, I'm not starting, but those letters, those Willie Lynch letters, behaviors, etc. Redlining, I don't want to go into this, but that's not figuratively. It's something that actually happened because there was increased risk for the federal, loans to insure loans in certain areas because, and again, that's real, it's redlining. Credit checks, redlining, because maybe generations are not teaching wealth, and wealth is perpetuated generation to generation. I'm saying this for a reason. So as a result, what happens is there's unresolved hurt, but not only that, it's there daily. I can go into a particular store. Again, I have 4 businesses. I went to med school. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm an apostle of the Lord's church. I'm followed when I go into a church. You see what I'm saying? And the reason I know is because I worked in a store, department store, when I was in high school. I finished school a year early, but I went to graduate with my class. So in the afternoons, I went to work, and I did things in the, what do you call it? I can't remember what it is, but the place where, clothes and all that kind of stuff, you're taking stuff off, wrapping stuff and tagging it. And then what is it? Theft and recovery or whatever it's called. But the point is, I know what they're doing. And the only reason is because I was in that situation. I worked in that area. So what happens is, I'm talking about, it can happen yesterday. It could happen today. It doesn't matter with respect to that. Like you said, love is important. And the reason why is, and we can't dismiss these things. The Tuskegee experiment, that penicillin was, it only taken penicillin. It didn't, why was the government, CDC, health department, why didn't the men get penicillin? So the point I'm making is, let me just end it with this, and I'll make it, because I'm not hostile. I like the conversation because it allows us to say, let's come together because of love and see what we can do to change it. We're all multicultural, whether we look like our phenotype, whether we look like it or not. My grandson's multicultural, I'm multicultural, you're probably multicultural. I mean, in a combination. Mm-hmm. But it's the culture. And again, God, love heals things. But I want to give you an example because I remember what Pastor said, and I want to just share this. He came to my house and I said, I have the best, flour, the best chocolate, the best butter, the best sugar. I'm going to make you the best brownies because I got this reputation of making brownies. But what if I went and put just 1/8 of a tablespoon, no, 1/8 of a teaspoon of dog mess inside, and I mixed all those together and I baked it. Now we're talking about the best butter, the chocolate, you probably couldn't taste it. You probably couldn't smell it, but it's there. I mean, I'm just saying. Concrete. It's concrete. It's concrete. That's summarizes everything.
That's good. I heard it shared a little bit different about Dr. Jerry Piscopo talked about a nice cold glass of milk and just putting one little mouse poop in it. It's just very little. It's very little. Would you drink it? And obviously not. But I think that's to your point. By the way, is this lynch, is the word lynching, does that come from that book or whatever?
I'm going to look it up right now. I would assume so, but I don't want to say something that is incorrect.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about that. But Pastor Donzelle, you look like you're ready to go on this. Let's hear your thoughts.
And so I guess, it's a lot swirling, man. This is a huge, broad topic. And but I think that for me to try to represent a balance is always important. And so I was raised in the Black community as a subculture in America, in an American culture. And so I have two perspectives that I can lean to. And what you were saying about the pathology of historically having a viewpoint that was handed down to you, as opposed to developing your own perspective through, the life that has come about now. Some people can't see the newness of today because they can't get past the oldness of yesterday. That's the thing. When you all tried to bring those two churches together, the race relations were so untouched and so unhealed, they found it incapable of coexisting because nothing had been addressed. And so being willing to address things is like the first step. They said you're not even a candidate for healing unless you can first admit to a sickness. And so that's absolutely important. But then, I can, like Dr. Lisa, you absolutely are an educator in your field. And I don't just mean an educator from a teaching standpoint of an occupation, but you're an educator in life, because in your involvement in all of your different influence, all of the different areas that you have influence, you still carry the banner of educating white America on what the Black culture is. To me, that's important. In all of my areas of influence, not only am I educating the white culture on the Black culture, I'm simultaneously educating the Black culture about white culture. Let me kind of just give a little definition to that. What I don't allow as a man of God, I do not allow myself to be in a Black environment where I hear racist conversations and I don't address them as a man of God. And so I've oftentimes corrected or interjected, I should say, what I believe good wisdom is in conversations that I viewed as hostile against white people. Mm. And I think that's important that I do that, because when, like you all said about some of the biggest problem that we're experiencing is what's not being said. And so if we're not giving voice to those wrongs and evils when we have influence and opportunity, then we're part of that problem. We're not helping the situation. We're actually propagating the strength of the problem. And so that's number one. Number two is, when I'm in white America, what I found out through my experience is the majority of people are not racist. We use the word racism so flippantly. Racism is everything if you just leave it up to us. Everything is racism. And what I found out is that is not true. What I believe is everybody's prejudice. Everyone. We all have our prejudices, and we all judge according to appearances until we learn better. That's just a human nature. That's not to any race. That's not isolated to any race. That's a human nature. And in those prejudices, this is what determines whether it's racism or it's prejudice. Prejudice is linked to ignorance. You have white people that, like Michigan is, out of the 100% population of Michigan, only 13% of Michigan is Black. And out of that 13%, about 75% of that Black is just here in Detroit. So that just gives you a viewpoint of that, as that Black, there's white people that have been raised in Michigan that has never been raised around a Black person. So all the context they have is on what they've heard and what they've seen on TV. And so when they get into a situation to where they actually have to interact with a Black person, they're going to be at a huge deficit to how that should look, because they have no context to compare it to. And so a lot of the things they say is going to be off base. It's going to appear to be racist, because only context they have is what they've heard and what they've seen. And usually Blacks are colored in a negative light to where they're going to regurgitate those negatives until they learn better. And so I say that to say, I've had the patience, like here we go, that love thing, love covers a multitude of faults. I've had the patience, the Lord has given me the forbearance and the patience and gentleness to allow a person their ignorance, but then educate them on what is real or what is true. And so this is how, again, how you can tell whether a person is just prejudiced or racist is after the prejudice is shown and information is given, whether a person refuses to take the information and make an adjustment or not. I've had people say things that appear to be racist, but when given a proper context, would be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that. And made an adjustment instantly. That's not racism. That's prejudice. And we have people around us all the time that make the adjustment because they just had ignorance. A lot of times I have to educate white culture because they say, man, what is it about Black culture where it appears that we're so violent and, and we take up so much of the jail space? Why are 50% of the murders committed by Black people when Black people only make up 13% of the population? That's a good question. And then so you have to give history as to what you've been saying, Dr. Lisa, about how most white people didn't know that in the 80s, the CIA came out and immediately said that, yes, we flooded the inner city communities with drugs. They literally, the government just says, you know what, in the 80s, and we're talking about, this is just a couple of decades ago. In the 80s, they came out and said, we flooded inner city streets, the urban community, we flooded them with drugs to help pay for wars. And then on top of flooding the inner city streets with drugs, President Reagan comes out and he institutes the war on drugs. And on top of instituting the war on drugs, which disproportionately targeted Black communities, so they create a problem, then create a solution, and then they enact laws that serve stiffer sentences for people who dealt with the drugs they flooded the inner community with, and lighter sentences on the drugs that affected white America. And so you have things that of that nature, which you just can't ignore and say that was history, that shouldn't have an effect on the way we live now. It has a profound effect on the way we live now. And so that's just an example of how there are two sides to a coin. And to your point, Tom, until we are willing to view both sides of that coin, not only to be heard, but to hear, that we can gain an understanding in all thy getting, get an understanding, because without an understanding, you can't accurately nor adequately respond in a way that can be unifying. And so this is just the beginning of what I hope will be many installments on the topic and opportunities for us to continue to just drive the narrative that we are one in Christ. And yes, there is work to be done to continue to forge that reality, but that's the goal and standard which we're buying into.
That's a mouthful, and and rightly so. And I think, as you were alluding to, I think this is a much deeper conversation. In other words, that there could be a long continuation of this conversation, because there's so many
layers to it. Yeah, so many layers.
But it's healthy to have a conversation about it. So let me share one of my stories real quick. I want to share two. One real quick. My wife and I and a whole bunch of people were crammed like sardines in this elevator, and the doors opened up on this floor, and this African-American lady was standing outside of the door, and we said, "Well, we're all full," and the door begins to shut. And she says, "It's a Black thing, isn't it?" I'm like, what did that have to do with the dirt on Venus? I mean, it had nothing to do with anything. The elevator was full. That's all it had to do with. So, but there's thoughts like that people have, and I know that when people walk into a room of any color, or even if you're not wealthy and you're walking into a wealthy room, and or whatever the case may be, whatever those things are, those prejudices, as you mentioned before, Pastor Donzelle, and you walk in the room with this thought in your mind: they're going to judge me. They're going to think these things about me. They already don't like me. Or they're going to judge me for the color of my skin, or because of how much money I have, or how intelligent I am. And while some of that might be true, when we walk in, we carry that presence with us when we walk in the room. And so we're going to be, our spidey senses are going, and we're alerted to any negative posture or words that could offend us. We're open for offense, rather than coming in with this thought that I know who I am. Especially, I know who I am in Christ. I'm an ambassador for him. And so I'm walking in this room as his person. And here I am. I'm just like I am. I can't do anything about what family I was born into, what nation I was born into, what color I was born as. I can't change anything of that. So how can I come in and just offer myself and say, here I am. Silver and gold have I none, but such as I have, I give to you, right? And then real quick, my other story is back when I was 16, I was jumped by 5 or 6 Black guys. They, beat me down. It's a long story, but they left me there for dead, and they stole my bike. And so from that moment, I had bitterness and resentment towards the Black culture. Absolutely. And I didn't have that before. I had Black friends before, but it just brought this racism in my heart. And I remember the next day going to the police station and asking I wanted to speak to the chief of police. I wanted help. And they said, well, he's in Hawaii. on vacation. And I said, well, what am I going to do about my bike? And this African-American woman officer, she said to me, if you see your bike, take it any way you can. And I said, any way I can? She said, any way you can. So my friends loaded up in the car with horseshoe stakes, and we went to look for these guys. Thankfully, we didn't find them. But my point is that bitterness entered in my heart. And we do that, and we see that even in our culture today. If one police officer does something wrong, all police are bad. If one white person does something wrong, all white people are bad. If one black person does something wrong, all black people are bad. And it's wrong because it's not true. But anyway, that's what happened to me. And so as I was sitting one day watching Rodney King getting beat down on national television, the Holy Spirit spoke to me and he said this, and I want everybody to hear this very clear. It's not the color of a man's skin, but the spirit that drives him. And I'll never forget that. I was about 20 years old at that point. And that has been the theme of my life. And right there in front of the television, I broke down and I said, God, forgive me. And from that moment on, God placed me in black congregations where I was the only white guy there. And it's just been a fantastic ride. But my point is that went away. The racism went away because it was all stemmed around unforgiveness.
Absolutely.
A lot of us are carrying unforgiveness, or even, as I mentioned earlier, I think a third-party offenses.
Yes.
Our father or our brother or our sister was done wrong, and so we take this upon ourselves, and we're carrying unforgiveness.
Yes.
I think, you mentioned earlier, Pastor Donzelle, about communication. I think the other thing that's at the top of the list is forgiveness. We've got to learn to forgive our past, forgive our past offenders. The Bible even tells us to pray for our enemies, bless those that persecute us and say all manner of evil against us. That's the heart that we walk in. Now, of course, we've got to address things when they come up, but not from a sense of hurt, not from a perspective of I'm hurt and I'm wounded and you just picked at that thing again. We've got to forgive and let it go. Think of Jesus, who was hanging on the cross, and after he had been ridiculed, falsely accused, whipped, beaten, his beard plucked out, crown of thorns pressed in his brow, and yet on the cross he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I mean, how can he do that? We can't even control ourselves when somebody cuts us off on I-75. And so in this moment, he was able to forgive. And when we forgive, that means there's no record of wrong. 1 Corinthians chapter 13 keeps no record of wrong. So we've taken that off the table. Not that we can't address an issue. I'm not saying that. But if we're coming from an attitude of hurt and pain and unforgiveness, we're never going to find resolution, because our hearts are always broken to those things. And until we can forgive and allow God to bring that love back into our heart, to love a person who has offended us, just like Jesus did, if we can do that, then we can have even better discussions as what we're having right now, because we've taken that off the table. I'm not holding any unforgiveness. You can say what you need to say, and I'll say what I need to say, and we'll make sure that the air is clear by the end of the conversation. But just know that my heart is this. This is my intention. This is my desire for this. This is the attitude I choose to walk in. And I hope that my attitude that I choose to walk in and my intention reflects my heart in a positive way. And I think, and when I say that, I'm saying that for all of us, that we come from that perspective, that it's my intention to show love. And if I'm ever not doing that, then please tell me, because my heart is the one of good. Dr. Lisa, you've been in the corner here for a minute, so let's hear what you have to say.
Well, I wanted to share something with you, two things. So I Googled it. And it says the word lynching comes from the name of a person who lived in Virginia in the 18th century, Captain William Lynch, was a self-appointed judge who sentenced people to die without a prior trial. This method of condemning someone to his death by hanging was called lynch's, with apostrophe S, law. Later, the act hanging was called lynching. And so I wanted to address that. I Googled that. And I just want to say this, like you said, Pastor, prejudice, presuppositions. We base our actions, our ideas, our thoughts on our experiences. This is what we bring. If I had an allergic reaction to eating a lemon, therefore everything that was lemon, who knows, maybe yellow, tastes like a lemon, I won't like. If it's a lemon hairbrand, if it's a lemon, etc., I won't swap because of past experience. But it's the truth, presuppositions. And so therefore, someone, like you said, which is a very awesome story, you know, you could have held to that and had bitterness in your heart and unforgiveness based on your past experiences. But no, you allowed Christ Jesus, Holy Spirit, to come and minister to you. And that's awesome. Again, I'm here, we can't dismiss it, but we can have more conversations, you know, and again, there's elephants in the room. I'll tell you this one last story. I remember when I was in med school, and what happened was I had graduated and they asked me to come and speak. So I spoke for this group of students, and it was a long time ago. I graduated med school like in '89. So, so what happens is that my lecture, and the words were this, I did research on it. And it said in the 20th century, it said that the majority of people in the United States, and it gave a number, I don't remember what, 20 something, the majority of people would be brown, yellow, and black. It wasn't the school or nothing like that, again, based on experiences, past experiences. And so again, that's why it's so important. Sometimes we don't know what it is that we don't know. Sometimes we say things that may offend someone. Sometimes that, again, taking unforgiveness. But what is important, I believe, with these conversations is opening the door of opportunity. Where, I mean, for example, Bishop T.D. Jakes, one of the things he's doing, getting ready to do in the process, and is housing. You know, legacy of housing opportunities because of real estate, you know, it's property, you know. So I say all those things to say, you know, throwing an opportunity for legacy, for opportunity for people to gain wealth, and then for that wealth to be perpetuated into the next generation. So opening opportunities, making people aware of, you know, did I say this? Did I say that? I sent my son to a Quaker school because it focused on, the Friends School focused on equality. So he was a young boy and he was like, you know, they were like called the teachers a first name and etc. I said, no, you got to call them by their Miss and Mrs. But the point I'm making is, and Mr. is that the focus of equality was there. We wanted equality. And so these discussions, you know, open up, and people from different circles of influence, I believe, will listen to this and hopefully will begin to reflect on themselves. What is it that's in me? Or what presuppositions do I have, you know, based upon what Pastor said, based on the lemon example? Do I care? What unforgiveness do I care? We have, as Christian believers, we have an advantage, and that's Holy Spirit. We allow him to work on us. And so it's just, to me, this is great. This is a door of opportunity. When you talked about the movie, when you talked about the mathematicians, I went to the same undergraduate school she did. The point is, this is how closely we're related to the people in our history. It's just like a stone throws away. We're here, you know, different ages, different, like I said, 20s, 30s, 40s, but it's so important because these stories can be said, this is what happened to me, and you want to make sure that the opportunity is there, you know, for unity for the rest of the world, for the rest of the people. That's, for me, it's important. Unity is important. Mm-hmm.
That's good. Me too. What about you, Pastor Donzelle? Anything else?
Yeah, lastly, for me, I'll just say that that healing is a personal choice. And so, I mean, as anybody who's been in a marriage, you know that forgiveness is necessary or your marriage isn't going to last. You have to heal because you're getting two people coming together to be made one. And so healing and forgiveness it has to be a personal pursuit. And so until we are willing to pursue healing, we'll always be agitated by things that come up that are abrasive. And so that'll be a perpetual agitation that will inhibit you from moving forward in your own life. And so we need to be healed from the things that we've experienced so we can be instruments of God to be a part of the healing process in the grand scheme of things. And I think ultimately our calling is to make God known. I think the purpose of man is to make God known. And the way we do that best is to live like him in our environments. And so I would just say that, never negate our personal need to evolve and to heal. And that would just give us a base point to be more of a change agent as it relates to our connection with the world around us.
This is certainly a conversation that we could have further. Maybe we'll schedule something again in the future. But I think that this is powerful, and we'd like to hear your thoughts, everybody. We'd like to hear what you're thinking on these things, and please send us an email. You can reach me at tom@realleadershipcompany.com. And Dr. Lisa.
You can contact me at DrLisaHFuller.com. So it's DrLisaHFuller at DrLisaHFuller.com.
What about you, Mr. Donzelle?
Me, I guess my email would probably be the best way, and that's just Donzelle Ringold, DonzelleRingold @yahoo.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today on Life, Love, and Leadership.